As you know, I am planning on writing a book about my mother and all my brothers and sisters. There were 13 children. The father died when I was just a baby, less than a year old. And it's time that someone could see how strong another person can be when they want to be. My mother was unbelievable. So I'm telling bits and pieces, and I hope to put them all together. So we'll start with some I'm involved in because of what I've seen and participated in. For example, when I got out of high school, barely, I wanted to go to college, but we didn't have money, of course, for that. So I went to work, and I worked in a brake factory where they make brakes for tanks and for trucks, a lot of the military stuff. And I handled these brakes. I packed them all day long, and I really got strong. And was making good money. We had lost several of my brothers, and I'll tell you about that later when I start to put it in order. And my brother Frank worked there too, but then he got married, and he went, I don't know where, but he moved somewhere. So there was only me and my mother living at that time at this one place that we moved into. Well, I want you to know that my mother has an attitude, or had an attitude, that it was her way or the highway. Not that she was, it's because she was right most of the time, but she's a strong-headed woman. So I fell in love, like all young men do, with a very lovely girl. And we were going to get married, so I even got a marriage license. Well, my mother did not object to my getting married, but she was not a Catholic. And her name was Shirley, by the way. And Shirley had no intentions of becoming a Catholic. And the marriage license was good for 90 days. So I mentioned to Shirley how important it was that we got married by a priest. And she didn't mind, but her mother objected. She was, I don't even know now, a Lutheran or something. I don't recall. I was young then. Anyway, I couldn't figure out what to do. And we had used up over 80 days of the 90-day period that the marriage license would be good. And my mother kept warning me, you're not going to get a marriage except at a church. So I said, all right. So the 90th day come up where the license would expire the following day. And I was out with my best buddy at that time, another Italian crazy kid, named Joe Urbana, funny name, funny guy. And he was dating a girl named Joyce, who was a friend of my future wife at that time. So, and he'd always joke about her, and she was very thin. And he used to tell people that he dated her so that he could check his gas tank once in a while and open it up and stick her in it and see how much gas he had left. But he was crazy. I mean, he was just that kind of guy. She didn't care, she really liked him. So I was telling Joe that, well, my dilemma is I get married in church. My wife would just, doesn't want to, and her mother doesn't want her to. I said, I could care less. I wasn't a very good Catholic. So Joe said, go get married, wherever you want. Let's do it right now. So it was the last day of the license being good, the 90th day. So Shirley said, yeah, let's go ahead and get married. So I said, okay. So got married by justice of the peace. And there was just 4 at the wedding, me and my wife, and then Joe and his girlfriend Joyce. So we spent the night somewhere at Geneva. Not Geneva on the Lake, which is a resort, really nice. By the way, some of this territory I'm from is beautiful country. So Geneva, but there's a Geneva on the Lake as well. So the next day, I come home. I told Shirley, I said, you better go to your house and I'll go to mine. I'll kind of break it into my mother, kind of easy like. Well, I got home and all my clothes, everything that I had was strewn over the front lawn. Door was locked. My mother I had a car and I pulled it. My mother come out. Said, come in at this house. I said, Ma, we get married by a priest later. She said, no. She slammed the door. So I had to live with my mother-in-law the day after I got married. Well, I was really bitter, very upset with my mother, And I'm thinking, well, all my buddies are getting drafted. And this is during the Korean War. And I was not drafted. And I went down to the draft board. I wanted to go into service, selfish reasons too, because I wanted to go to college, and I knew that if I was in the service that I would get a college education free. So I went down to the draft board and I asked the draft board, I said, no, how come I'm not being drafted? I mean, all my friends are being drafted. And they pull up my record and they said, well, you're 4A. So I'm 1A. There's nothing wrong with me. You're 4A. Well, what does that mean? That means you can't be drafted because you're the last surviving son. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I've got 3 or 4 brothers left, from you're the last one living with your mother. So I said, well, I'm not there right now. I said, but okay. So I left and found out that my mother was going to California to visit one of my other brothers. His name is Bob. He was once called Louis. In fact, on his birth certificate it says Louis. He didn't like the name, he changed it. By the way, my brother Guido didn't like his name, and he changed his. So we'll get to those later. So anyway, while my mother was on a train, because she got free transportation anywhere on the railroad because my father died working on the Nickel Railroad. So she was on her way to California to visit my brother Louis, which was now Bob. I, in turn, figured out, well, if I don't get drafted, I'll just join. So I I drove to Cleveland, which is 50 miles, 50, 60, I don't know, from Ashtabula. Drove to Cleveland, went to the draft board, and the Army draft board, they said, why didn't they draft you? And I explained to them, they said, well, we don't want you to enlist here. I said, well, then I'll go somewhere else. I went to the Air Force. God, thank God I did. I love the Air Force. So nothing wrong with the Army, guys, but I just loved the Air Force. I'll tell you why about that, too. So I joined the Air Force. Well, I got back to Ashtabula. My mother got back from California maybe a week later or 2 weeks later. I was still living with my mother-in-law. And my sister told me that my mother wanted me to go see her. She said, Ma wants you to go over there and eat, talk to her. So my mother heard that I had joined the service. Well, if she had any clothes to throw out, she would have, but she didn't. But anyway, she just was so different, a total change of heart. And she told me she wished she wasn't the one that made me join the service, because my mother's seen several coffins come in the door with the American flag on. And this was during the Korean War, and right near the end of it, but there was no peace yet. They were still fighting. So she apologized to me. She said she just didn't want to see me live in sin. And it was for my soul that she was concerned about. And she wanted all of her children to be in heaven and didn't want to see me not be there. Which to this day I don't understand. But strong belief, strong religion, according to the Catholic Church. I was living in sin every day that I stayed with my wife, because I didn't get married by a priest. So we made up, so to speak. And I'm so glad we did. So I needed to tell you that, because the woman who apologizes to her son fixes me one heck of a meal. So again, that's another incident that occurred. A lot of these incidents I remember, I'm involved, but the story is about her. But then I'm going to tell you about my other brothers and sisters too. My two sisters, Tony and Anita, and how we lost. There's only me, Frank, and Tony left. There's only 3 of us left today. So we went through quite a bit. I'll tell you more about it later. Thanks for listening. Anyway, you're another 3x5 card for my file. Thank you. Bye.